We will have our second lesson today in Books of the Jewish People, our text of the Jewish people, is about Midrash. Okay, Midrash, if you don't remember, was written around the year 500 CE, okay, around here, around the time of the Talmud, um, written by the rabbis as commentary on the Torah, okay, explaining different verses from the Torah, but through that bringing their take on ethics, philosophy, approach to life, the right way to live, worshiping God, prayer, questions of suffering in the world, um, questions, why do bad things happen to good people, etc. It's like they talk about everything. They do it through stories. They take a verse, okay, they try to understand the verse, they build on it a story with some sort of a moral in the story that you have to understand through that what their approach to life is. Unlike philosophy, right? Philosophy is very different. Philosophy, you lay out, you make a statement, and then you prove that statement, and then you lay out in a very rational and orderly fashion the arguments for and against. The rabbis don't do it in that way. They do it in a much more creative way and probably more interesting. That's why, it's maybe easier to learn that than philosophy, because it's sort of like through the stories you get the way of life. And the stories that we want to share today, okay, is the Midrash from Vayikra Rabbah, and it's on page 3. And I'm reminding you, last week I told you there's a genre of stories, rabbis criticizing rabbis, like how should rabbis really behave? And at the end of the lesson today, if we have time, we'll try to discuss why a rabbi is writing this about rabbis, and what do they want to tell us through that. So Vayikra Rabbah is a book from around the year 500 CE, written in the land of Israel, partially in Hebrew, but mainly in what's called Syrian Aramaic or Palestinian Aramaic. Okay, so Aramaic was the English, was the lingua franca of the entire Mesopotamia world. They spoke that in Babylonia, okay, which was really the empire of the day. They spoke it in the land of Israel, which the Romans called Palestine. Okay, that's why it's called Palestinian Aramaic, but there were no Palestinians that we know today there, obviously, but the Israelites, the Jewish people lived in that Palestine. And there's also a Syrian Aramaic. There were different dialects. Just like today, we have Australia, they speak English. We can't understand a word they say, right? And they have different words, okay? But it's supposed to be English. It's English, right? And in England, right? So you have different versions of English, exactly the same with Aramaic. The same with Arabic, right? There are different dialects of Arabic. It's like Moroccan Arabic is very different than Egyptian Arabic. It's like, because that's how it is. Okay, so now to our story. Another matter. And now we bring a verse, right? Because we said we always start with a verse. And for one who sets his path. Okay, so the verse talks about someone that sets their path in life. So they have a way, they have some kind of a way of a living. And we could probably already start, and by the statement coming right afterwards, Rabbi Yanai said, it is written Vesham, indicating that one who assesses, okay, uh, his path, his value is great. Okay, so if you have, it's a play on words. I'm not going to explain the Hebrew because it's not, we're not here in a Hebrew lesson, but it's really it's pronounced Vesam, okay, which he's sort of like changing to Vesham. Sounds very similar. Vesam, Vesham. Vesam is to put. Vesham has a lot of meanings. It could be over there, but it could also mean from the word of assess, like shamai. Okay, like to assess something. So it's a play on the words in Hebrew. It's written the same, but it has like different pronunciation. So if you assess your path in life, you will have great value in that. As you do things in life, assess what you do. Okay? That's a good lesson, right? Here's a philosophical idea. But now comes a story that will illustrate how to do that. There was an incident involving Rabbi Yanai who was walking along the way and he saw a certain person who was exceedingly distinguished in dress. Okay, very simple story. Rabbi Yanai, a very important rabbi that lived in Achbara. Achbara is a nice village by Tzfat, the city of Tzfat. I think you mentioned that last time, right? The Lurias from Tzfat. And until today, there's an Arab village by the name of Achbara, like almost 2,000 years later. So that village is still there. And there's even archaeological excavations there, and you see an ancient synagogue. I even went there once and saw an ancient synagogue there. It's marvelous. Yeah, exactly, that area. So he was a very famous rabbi. He's walking in the way, and he saw a person exceedingly distinguished in dress. Okay, and the Hebrew says meshupa beyoter means could be with a lot of assets. You can see this is a rich man. Some people maybe also say like a heavy man because he has like a lot on him. But it could be both. And sometimes at those days, if you had extra weight on you, it also meant you had more money, right? Because you could get food. If you're very thin, it wasn't because you were dieting or going to the gym or were worried about how you're going to look in the summer in the bikini in the bathing suit. It's just because you didn't have food. That's why you would be thin back then.
I would think, a man of value, I would think he was maybe the mayor of the town.
No, it's because of the rest of the story, so it can't be. It was someone he did not know, okay? But someone probably very rich, very wealthy. So he said to him, would the distinguished rabbi, meaning you, because you're a distinguished person, so probably you're also not a rabbi, but like an important person. So he's calling him rabbi, not because he's a rabbi, but because he's an important person. Would you agree to be received as a guest with us. Okay? He said to him, yes. He took him into his house and gave him food and drink. What a lovely scene. You see someone nice walking on the street. I was like, oh, with Shabbos is so nice. You know, I was like, you don't have where to eat, or come to my house, I'll feed you. And he comes and he gives him drink and food. Drink means wine. So he's also, you know, spending some money on him, and they're having a great time. Now, never a boring story with the sages. Now it's going to twist completely. So please be ready and buckle your seatbelt. He tested him in Bible, but did not find him knowledgeable. In Mishnah, but did not find him knowledgeable. In Agadah, but did not find him knowledgeable. In Talmud, but did not find him knowledgeable. So what's happening now?
What's Agadah?
Agadah is a Midrash. Okay? So what do you mean he tested him in Bible, in Mishnah, in Talmud?
It's not well studied and
You know, two Jews are sitting down for a meal. Okay, let's talk some Torah. What do you think about, you know, the Torah, the weekly Torah portion? What do you think the Midrash telling us about the Torah portion? You know, I learned something very interesting in Talmud. Tell me something interesting you know about this. Okay, because you know, that's like, what else would a rabbi do with someone else? You know, that's their life. And this man, it's like, I don't know anything. I don't know anything about Bible. He's like asking him, it's a Torah portion. He's like, you can't say anything smart about that? It's like, I know nothing. Mishnah, I know nothing. Agadah, Midrash, nothing, you know? It's like, if I test you now, I ask you one thing that you've learned over the last year, you'll be able to say something, right?
Yeah, but he dresses nicely though.
Right, he dresses nicely.
Too smart.
So this guy is not very knowledgeable, okay? He has no idea about anything in Judaism. He's Jewish, we know he's Jewish, but he's completely ignorant. What we would call today in Israel a secular Jew, or maybe in America we would call him an assimilated Jew, right? Someone who would not know anything, doesn't celebrate Passover, doesn't come to synagogue on Yom Kippur, has no knowledge of anything at all. Okay.
What's the term?
Here,
Yeah,
assimilated Jew,
assimilated.
someone who's completely assimilated. Okay. I have a friend, you know, I met him through not the synagogue or anything like that. And his father's Jewish, but that's all he knows about Judaism. He knows nothing. He remembers that when he was a kid, they did a Passover Seder, they went to an aunt. But he has no knowledge of anything at all. Very lovely, nice guy. And he has a very Jewish last name, which is also funny, right? Because he has no clue. And he married someone from Mexican origin, and you know, so when she applies to jobs, everyone thinks she's Jewish.
Yeah.
So you know, he's Jewish. He has no idea about anything, and she, you know, so it's just. I mean, but that's assimilation, complete assimilation in that sense. Okay. So we have here a guy. Now it's interesting, right? Also at a time where we would think, oh, the rabbis ruled, and shouldn't everyone have some kind of Jewish knowledge, etc.? This is very important, by the way. This is very important. You can learn history through reading the Midrash, because this is written by the rabbis, and it's telling us a situation that they lived among communities with a lot of people that were not knowledgeable at all. Okay, not everyone was like the rabbis. Okay, there were different sections of the society. There were the rabbis, they were studying Torah all day. They were very versed. They learned, you know, the alphabet. They knew everything, but they were an elite, like in an ivory tower. The rest of the people who would work in the fields and everything, they probably knew the Shema. They probably knew, you know, daven the Amidah, some of the prayers. They had Passover. They probably knew some of the stories of the Bible, but that's it. They didn't have like all the knowledge that the rabbis have, etc. They didn't have time for that. And then apparently from this story, there's another section of society, people who have no knowledge at all. They grow up without any of this at all. Interesting to see the sociological, make of the society, right? So what happens now? He said to him, take and recite the blessing. Okay, now I have to stop for a second and says, so what does it mean, recite the blessing? Okay, they're done eating. What do you do after you're done eating? Right? What do we do in the synagogue after we're done eating? We do the grace after the meal, the prayers after the meal, Birkat Hamazon. Okay, so, and what does it mean? Take. Take means take a glass of wine, because in ancient times, sometimes you also do that now for, when you have Sheva Bachot, when you have like the 7 blessings of wedding, you start the grace over meal with a glass of wine, like the final glass of wine. Okay, we don't do that anymore today, but they used to do that in the past. So he says, take the glass of wine and recite the blessing. Okay, if I start singing now the blessing and the Birkat Hamazon, probably some of you can join me, right? Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, right? So he's telling him, you probably went to, where do you know it from? Camp?
I went to Jewish camp one summer, so every meal.
Okay, so he's telling this guy, you probably went to camp. Okay, at least do the grace after me. At least entertain me by singing that. Okay, so what does the guy said to him? He said to him, let Yanai recite the blessing in his house. So what does it mean? Does he know the blessing? He doesn't know the blessing. He didn't know anything before that. So he's like, I'm sorry, I didn't go to Jewish summer camp. I didn't go anywhere. My parents sent me to ski camp, where it's like, or maybe they sent him to to business school camp, because he's very rich, but he never had time to learn Judaism. He doesn't even know that. Now, what's interesting that he calls him Yanai. He doesn't call him Rabbi. So there's already a conflict there, right? He's like, I don't like what's going on here. You're not treating me right. Like, this guy is smart, right? He's a businessman. He's very rich. It's like he understands people, okay? And he's like, I don't like the way you're treating me. You're testing me in Bible, in Mishnah, in Agada. I like, leave me alone. Like I'm your guest. Like what do you want from me? Like, stop it, okay? And now you're, playing around with me, doing the grace over meal. Like, you realize, like, I don't know that. That's not fair what you're doing. Okay, like, what kind of like a rabbi are you? So he's not calling him rabbi, he's calling him Yanai, his personal name, right? Very important part of the story. So in the Midrash, you have to pay attention to every word, or even the words that are missing. Okay. Well, another important fact is that he says, let Yanai recite the blessing in his house. It is really traditional to give the blessing over the meal to a guest from the outside. If you have a guest that's knowledgeable, okay, that could do it. If you don't give it to someone who can't do it. But he's like telling him, I don't want to do it. You do it in your house. Like, leave me alone from all of this. Okay. So now, and if you thought the story is starting to be interesting until now comes really the climax of the story. He said to him, are you able to repeat what I say to you? He said to him, yes. Okay, now this is like crazy, because he's like telling him, could you at least repeat what I say to you? Like, I'll say Baruch, and I'll say Atah, we'll say Ta. I'll say Adonai. Okay, so I'll guide you through this. Okay, he's like almost mocking him. Like, but here's like an adult. He's not a child. Like, why are you treating this guy like this? Only because he doesn't have Torah in him, right? Like we understand Rabbi Zianai. Rabbi Zianai is very condescending. The rabbis are criticizing Rabbi Yanai. How do we know that? Because they're writing the story not in his favor. He's not behaving in a very nice way, unless you see a different angle here.
I was gonna say, it sounds like he resents him for not having the knowledge.
Exactly. It's like you're a rich man, you're so successful, but you never had time to do anything in your life with your Judaism. You're worthless. That's how he's treating him, right? That's like a very, very obnoxious approach by Rabbi Yanai. So he said to him, say, instead of teaching him something in Judaism, instead of maybe teaching him the Aleph Bet or how to pray, he said, say, the dog ate Yanai's piece of bread. Oh my God.
Yeah, that's really.
Okay, who's the dog? You're a dog. Say, you're like a dog. You're like worthless. Okay, like a dog could bark. That's all you could do. You could bark. Okay, not the rabbis. Rabbi Yanai. The rabbis wrote this, criticizing Rabbi Yanai. They're criticizing the rabbis that are all immersed in Torah and don't pay any attention to how they're behaving. Okay, that was probably a phenomena. That might have been a problem. Maybe now we can even think, maybe this is why there's so many sections, because there are all these rabbis that are isolated from everyone else, studying Torah, not approachable and teaching other people and bringing them closer to Judaism. And they're alienating to the point that people grow up not knowing anything. You know how many Jews in Israel I know, Israeli Jews, that they hate the rabbinate and the chief rabbinate that is so obnoxious in Israel. They say, I don't want anything to do with Judaism. And that really pains me. That's because they met rabbis that are so condescending and are just not approachable. That's like a very sad thing when that happens. And I have a lot of dear friends like that are very offended. And they say, oh, if only, we would have known rabbis like you, from the conservative movement, from the reform movement, that are more approachable, that are more, like we would be able to be more connected to our Judaism. I hear that all the time. Okay. So what happens now? The guest stood and grabbed Rabbi Yanai and said to him, my inheritance is with you, and you are preventing me from it, and you are preventing it from me. You are preventing me from it, okay? So something's interesting ahead. The man is shook up. He's very upset. He has every right to be. He grabs Rabbi Yanai like this, okay? Or like this, I don't know, there are no photos here, but we could imagine. He's like, pick him, like very upset with the guy, with the rabbi. And he says to him, my inheritance is with you, and you're preventing it from me. What's the inheritance? Judaism.
Yes.
You are a rabbi. You are the representative of Judaism. That's my inheritance. I'm a Jew. Okay? But your approach to human beings are preventing me from studying Torah. If you want to teach Torah to people, you cannot do it the way you've done it now. You got to behave like a human being. You got to be approachable. When you teach Torah, you got to do it in a soft way. Okay? It's not just like teaching it like a textbook, like math or something like that. But it applies also to math, right? Didn't we all have math teachers that were not nice, and that's like, forget about math, we don't want to do anything with math? I had some, okay, but when I had a good math teacher, I was like, I still became a rabbi, not a Methodist, but still, okay. But I liked math, okay. So the same with Judaism. It's like he's telling him, you're a terrible teacher, but it's much more than a teacher. You have my inheritance. Why is it my inheritance? Okay. So the rabbi is asking, like, what do you mean my inheritance? So he said, Rabbi Yanai, in what sense is your inheritance with me? He's asking him, he doesn't understand. So he said to him, he's not answering the way I answered. You're representing Judaism, and therefore Judaism is in your hands, and you're preventing me from studying it. That's not, again, it's another layer of a story. One time, he tells him a story. One time, I was passing before a school, and I heard the voices of the children saying, Moses commanded us Torah, the inheritance of the congregation of Jacob. Beautiful. Okay. So he's giving him like the best answer ever. He says, I was walking one day and I was passing by a school where kids were learning. Kids learning back then means they were learning how to read, they were learning Torah, they were learning Mishnah, and all the things that you tested me and I didn't know anything because I never had a chance to go to that school. Maybe I was very poor. Maybe the man grew up very poor and never had the opportunity. Maybe his parents had a bad fight with the rabbis like Rabbi Yanai. So it's like, we're not sending you to a school like that with the rabbis. Okay. But he, as an adult, an uneducated adult, once saw the kids and was so moved by that. Okay. And I heard them singing, Moses commanded us store the inheritance of the congregation of Jacob. Now you all know this verse, all of you that come to on Shabbat to the services. Do you know the verse? I'll sing it to you and you'll join me. Torah, 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 Tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 Tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 Tziva lanu Moshe. Morasha Kehilat Yaakov. Okay, Yaakov, Jacob. Okay, so Moses commanded us Torah, Torah tziva lanu Moshe, Morasha Kehilat Yaakov, the inheritance of the congregation of Jacob. So this is a well-known verse. You can imagine the kids in the school that he passed by singing this in their, when they have a break and they're playing soccer and running around, so they're singing this song. Okay, and turn to page 4. He says, the inheritance of the congregation of Yanai is not written here, but rather the congregation of Jacob. Okay, so it doesn't say Morasha Kehilat Yanai, it says Morasha Kehilat Yaakov. Do you understand what he's like telling him? Okay,
No.
it's the inheritance of the congregation of Jacob. Who's Jacob?
The father of Israel.
The father of Israel. What's the second name to Jacob? Israel. Okay, when he fights with the angel, and the angel gives him a second name, which is Israel. So the children and the verse are singing that the inheritance of the people of Israel, okay, is for all of Israel, not just for Yanai, not just for you and your fellow rabbis that are obnoxious and are alienating people from their Judaism. It's all of us, including the children at the school, including myself. Okay? So he's really giving it to him strongly. Do you understand? Okay. So first of all, it's interesting because now we know he does know a verse, right? So he knows he knows something. He just didn't like the approach of the rabbi. Okay, he probably knows something. It's like I've never met anyone that doesn't know anything. Okay, so he knows. He didn't feel like he was able to share any of that with the rabbi because of the way he was treating him,
It's put off by him.
put off by him. But he makes also a very smart midrash himself, this man. He's like, it doesn't say, the verse doesn't say the house of Yanai, the congregation of Yanai, it says the congregation of all of us. So he's smart. He's able to take a verse from the Torah and apply it to today. That's a beautiful rabbinic way of doing things. So there's another layer to this midrash, which is the person who has no knowledge is actually using whatever little knowledge he has in a rabbinic way, in a creative rabbinic way, like they do, and it's like a play on that as well. It's another layer. So now, what does Yanai said? Yanai is shook up. First of all, physically, because the man is like, held him. Probably by now he laid him down on the ground. Hopefully. But he also understands he was wrong. And we know that he understands that because of what he says now. He said to him, why did you merit to eat at my table? So he understands this, I probably didn't, behave properly. And I merited that you came to eat at my table because you taught me a lesson now. Okay, I think Yana is going through some kind of a metamorphosis here where he realizes, oh my God, I didn't treat this guy right. Okay, he is smart. He knows something about Judaism, and also it wasn't like the right way that I treated him. He needed that shaking up, right? Sometimes we need that. So the guy said to him, in all my days, I never heard a bad word and related it to its subject. And I never saw two people quarreling with one another and did not make peace between them. So he's like, what a guy, what a nice guy. Okay? He didn't learn a lot of Torah. He doesn't know a lot of Judaism. He's not a rabbi. He's not very learned, but he's a really decent guy. He makes an effort when he sees two people fighting to make peace between them. Is that not written in the Torah? Are you not supposed to love your neighbor as yourself? Are you not supposed to try and make peace in the world? Is that not Judaism as well? He's a great Jew. Okay, he does mitzvahs all the time, but maybe just not the way the rabbi wants him to do. But he's a good person, right? Turns out. So Rabbi Yanai, he said, you have so much civility to your credit, and I called you a dog. So he's like, oh my God, I can't believe this. I called you a dog, and you're like such a good, honest person. As opposed to, by the way, the rabbi, who is like, very arrogant, right? And not the kind of person that tries and makes peace between, right? He's really based on conflict in his approach. So he applied in his regard, and now the story basic ends, because Rabbi Yanai said, he applied in his regard, and for one who sets his path, one who assesses his path, his value is great. Okay, so it's like you need to have the ability to assess yourself at every point in your life. So Rabbi Yanai also was able to transform himself and assess, I have not been treating people right. Okay, and he's doing what's called in Judaism tshuva, repentance. Okay, he's doing repentance and changing his behavior. And now comes sort of like an ending to the story with a moral. As Rabbi Ishmael bar Rav Nachman said, civility preceded the Torah by 26th generation. That is what is written to guard the path to the tree of life. Path, this is civility, and then the tree of life, this is the Torah. Okay? So, okay, so this is a very interesting concept as well. Civility preceded the Torah. by 26 generations. So when the world was created, okay, first the path of life, of civility was created, and only then the Torah, the tree of life, which is the Torah. So you have to have civility. You have to have like a proper, decent, honest, peaceful human being. And that precedes the Torah. That's more important than being very learned and being a scholar in Torah. That is the values that the rabbis want us to take from this story. Okay, very clear message. They could have said it that way, but we would like kind of like ignore it. Oh yeah, it's like but let's study Torah. No. They have a very strong message. They have a story that's very strong and powerful to tell us exactly that. Okay.
So Rabbi, there wasn't really this incident between the rabbi and this other man. This is just a made up story, an example.
Nobody knows.
What's this AI thing?
Yeah.
Can you repeat that again?
Yeah. So there wasn't a man named Rabbi Yanai and this other guy. This was a made up story, or was it a real passed down story?
There was a real Rabbi Yanai, that lived in Akbara, in that village. We don't know if exactly this story happened, but he was probably an arrogant, whatever. And the rabbis were probably not happy with him because complaints came again and again. People would come from his village and would go to rabbi somewhere else, and they would tell them, like, this rabbi is like not a nice person.
Rabbi, it's hard to believe, but yesterday, I think exactly in that time, I was in synagogue here,
Uh-huh.
and we had lunch, and then we're supposed to go for your presentation about
Yeah.
Urut. So I came a little bit late for okay. Should I tell this, or maybe you need to?
Yeah, I want to continue.
Yes, continue.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then if we have time, I'll.
Okay, absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate
Yeah.
understanding. Okay, so the next story, okay, is the bottom of page 4. Another matter, this should be the law of the leper. Okay, so this we understand is from the book of Vayikra, from Leviticus, and it talks about the laws of the lepers. Turn to page 5. That is what is written. Who is the man who desires life? Mi aish chafetz chaim. Okay, it's from Psalms. There was an incident involving a certain peddler who would circulate in the towns adjacent to Tzipori and would proclaim and say, who seeks to purchase the elixir of life? Okay, so this guy is going, he's a peddler, in Hebrew, rochel, and that's a very important thing to understand. In a moment I'll explain it, but he's going around with his merchandise from place to place, and who wants to purchase the potion, right? Like a love potion. So this is like a life potion.
Yeah.
You're gonna drink this, you're gonna live forever. Is he selling something true? Probably not. We sometimes have you ever seen like rabbis like or priests selling water, like holy water? You'll drink this, you'll live. Okay. What, you've heard about these things?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So some people are gullible, and if you're, and if you have trouble in life, you want to believe in these things, so you might cling to it when you're like, in sorrow and in pain. And so, we got to be very careful in these things. But here, this guy is like a good example of this. He's like walking around. It's like, I have the potion of life. I have the potion of life. Get it for me today, only today. Okay. And you'll live forever.
Yeah.
Okay. So everyone's like, oh, this is interesting. Life is pretty boring in the town. And let's see what this guy has to offer. And maybe a lady or two buys it because he's a very good sales person, right? Or a man or two would buy it. A peddler, rochel in Hebrew, also means to gossip. Okay, to gossip is something that you do. You walk around and you spread gossip. Okay, it's like a peddler in a way. You're going from one place to the other with the news. And who would be the best deliverers of gossip in ancient times? The peddler.
This
Right?
is town to town.
Oh, you just came from there?
Yeah.
How are they doing? How is that couple that was fighting all day long? Are they still, did that, old maiden that, that reached her 40s, did she ever get married? It's like they want to hear all these, oh, how's the rabbi there? It's like, we heard you're having troubles. Like, do you have a new, like, there was like, and the peddler has all the news. Okay, so he's like, everyone's like congregating around him, and you want to hear what's going on in the world, right? So the leprosy that we're talking about, right? Because we're talking about here about the leprosy, is believed to be given by lashon hara, which means like bad mouth. When you badmouth someone, when you tell gossip about them, you're not supposed to gossip, right? That's not just a Jewish concept,
Right.
but in Judaism, there's a very strict rule not to gossip. Okay, so you're not supposed to gossip, and if you gossip, you can get leprosy. That's sort of like the punishment that you get leprosy. That was like the understanding back then. And there's a joke, of course, that the verse says, "You shall not walk and gossip amongst your people." Like, don't walk from one person to the other and gossip. Okay, so the joke is like, if you have good gossip, of course you should not walk. You should run and so.
Fine line between what is gossip and what is news.
Yeah, yes, that's a very good point, right? So people would crowd around him, and Rabbi Yanai was sitting and interpreted verses in his study. Oh, Rabbi Yanai is back in the story, okay? Our problematic Rabbi Yanai. So now we know this is happening in Achbara, in the village, and he is studying up in his, like, he has a house, he has a 2-story house, and on top he's studying. He heard the peddler proclaiming, "Who seeks the elixir of life?" He said to him, "Come in here and sell it to me." He said to him, the peddler said to him, "You and those like you do not require it." So, okay, that's interesting. He's like, I'm not selling it to you guys, okay? There could be 2 reasons. One is because the potion to life is Torah. If you study Torah, okay, you don't need it. You live forever. There's a beautiful Midrash about King David, who's very old, and God is sending the angel of death to take him to heaven. And the other angels hear that, and they're like very unhappy with God. They're like telling him, God, King David, like, you said he should live forever, etc. And the house of David should be, So God said, but it's his time to die. He's a human being. All human beings need to die. So the other angels, they're not happy with that. So they go and tell King David. And then according to the legend, so King David is like, oh, I don't want to die. I want to live forever. What can I do? So they tell him, well, if you study Torah nonstop, 24/7, you won't die. Just don't stop studying it. Okay. So he starts studying Torah 24/7, doesn't sleep, doesn't, stop for anything, and studying, and he keeps being alive. The angel of death sees this and says, I'm not gonna get my salary this week. Okay, I'm gonna be hungry. I'm like, I gotta get this King David back up. Okay. So he takes a big jar, okay, of glass, and he shatters it next to King David, and King David, like, scared for a moment, okay, and he stops studying Torah, and at that point he takes him away from earth. Okay, so that's the story, but the story is like an illustration. It's not a real story, and the rabbis don't mean that people won't die if you don't study Torah, but it's to encourage you that it's like you won't die. Like your life will be so meaningful and will be so blessed if you study Torah all day long. So that's what they're trying to encourage you to do. So one option is the peddler is telling him, you don't need my potion for long life because you have Torah. The other way you can interpret it, based on the previous story that we just learned, is like, you guys, I don't want to deal with you. Okay. It's like, you don't behave nicely with people, and you're going to question me, and you're going to be nasty to me. And I don't want to deal with you. That could be like another option of the way he's looking at it. So he said so Rabbi Yanai pressed him, and he came to him. Okay, so he convinced him at the end to come. The peddler took out the book of Psalms and showed him the verse, who is the man who desires life? What is written after it? Guard your tongue from evil, turn away from evil, and perform good. Okay? So, and Rabbi Yanai said to him, Solomon too proclaims and says, one who guards his mouth and his tongue guards himself from troubles. And Rabbi Yanai said as well, all my life I've been reading this verse, but I did not know how obvious it is until this peddler came and informed me who is the man who desires life. Okay, so this is very interesting, right? Because now I've got to give you a short lesson in Hebrew. Okay. Dry ease. Is this okay for
I think so.
Ray?
Otherwise, she didn't have to. Where else would you use it? Generally on the bed. And now it's thinking on its peppers. See that?
Okay, so the verse is oh, you know what? Let me do it on the screen so everyone could see it on the okay. Let's do it like this. Okay. Okay, this is the verse. Who is the man who desires a life? So he's like, yeah, I never really understood what this verse means. Like, how do you desire life? Okay, and it says, okay, guard your tongue. Okay. Okay, so this here is the letter mem, and this here is nun, and this here is the letter samech. They come one after the other. Okay, so bear with me now. Okay, so who is the man who desires life? That's mem. Guard your tongue from evil is nun, netzor leshoncha mira, in nun, and turn away from evil and perform good, that's samech, that's sur mira v'aseh tov. The middle one is guard your tongue from evil. If you guard your tongue from evil, you will live forever. Okay? You will, and how could that be? He never understood that. My father, Rabbi Michael Graetz, okay, when I studied this with him, told me a very beautiful secret. Okay? And he said, if you take out this letter nun, you're left with two letters, which is samech and mem. Okay? Like this. Okay? And when you put these together, you get the word sam, which means potion. Okay? So the potion for life, okay, who is a man who desires life, is here in the middle. And what is the middle? Guard your tongue from evil. Okay? So it's like, yeah, he has the secret for life, because it's a secret. You have to, you don't just know this. You gotta, I didn't know it. I looked at it and didn't understand it. I had to have my father explain this to me in his great insight and wisdom. Okay? So the potion to life is guard your tongue from evil. This is why Rabbi Yanai is so excited. By the way, I wrote a paper on this and got a very good grade because of this secret that I was able to reveal, and obviously gave credit to my father in the paper. But this is like so exciting. So now we understand that this peddler is not just he has the book of Psalms, he knows something, and he has insights that maybe a rabbi like Rabbi Yanai, very seasoned, learned for many years, doesn't know. So he's like, oh, I realize there is Torah also amongst other people. And that's why he is like saying, all my life I've been reading this verse, but I did not know how obvious it is until this peddler came and informed me. It's so obvious. It's like, once you understand this, like you'll never forget this. Okay? So it is valuable. This peddler is selling something that is of value because he's selling also moral principles of proper behavior in life embedded with Torah. And the story ends with, therefore Moses cautions Israel and says, this shall be the law of the leper, the law of the defamer. Motzi Shemra, meaning, okay, if you badmouth people, if you don't talk to people properly, okay, if you don't guard your tongue from evil, you will get leprosy. Okay, your life will be miserable like the person who has leprosy. Okay, keep yourself clean, your tongue and the way you talk to people, and you're able to have a good and prosperous life. So this really concludes our lesson about Midrash. Okay, next time when I come back on July 2nd, we will continue with a new topic. But if there are any comments,